The first time I noticed the notes, I thought they were just fragments of imagination clinging to the edges of sleep. The kind of half remembered thoughts that disappear when morning light spills across the room. But that morning was different because the words didn't fade. They stayed sharp and clear in my mind like ink carved into stone. Don't trust the mirror after midnight. I sat upright in bed, my chest tight with an unfamiliar unease, staring at my bedroom wall as if expecting it to answer questions I hadn't even formed yet. And when I finally stood up, dragging my feet across the cold marble floor, I froze because there it was. A folded piece of paper resting on my desk that I knew for certain had not been there before I went to sleep. And as my fingers unfolded it, trembling slightly, the same words from my dream stared back at me in dark, slanted handwriting that didn't belong to me. Before we dive deeper into this strange mystery, take a second to subscribe to the channel and stay with me till the end, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about dreams and reality. I laughed nervously at first, telling myself it was some kind of prank or maybe my own forgetfulness playing tricks on me. But deep inside, there was a growing whisper of dread, the kind that curls around your spine and tightens like invisible fingers. Days passed, and every night the dreams returned. Long corridors filled with shadows, flickering lights, and the faint scent of rain even when the sky outside was clear. And every morning another note appeared, each one predicting something small yet disturbingly precise. "You will drop the glass at 3:17 p.m., one note said. And when the time came, my hand slipped for no reason at all, the crystal shattering against the floor exactly as written, sending shards skidding across the tiles like scattered pieces of my certainty. At first, I tried to ignore them, stuffing the notes into a drawer, pretending they didn't exist. But curiosity is a dangerous thing when mixed with fear. And one night, instead of fighting sleep, I leaned into it, letting the darkness pull me under like deep water swallowing the shore. That was when I saw her for the first time. She stood at the end of a long hallway, her silhouette framed by pale moonlight leaking through cracked windows, her dark hair falling like liquid shadows over her shoulders. And even though I couldn't see her face clearly, I felt something tighten inside my chest. A pull, a strange familiarity, as if I had known her long before memory began. "You're late," she whispered, her voice soft but heavy with something that sounded dangerously close to disappointment. And the moment her words touched the air, the hallway began to twist, walls stretching taller, lights flickering violently. And I woke with a gasp, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding so loudly it echoed in my ears. The next note was waiting on my bedside table. "You finally saw me." That was the moment fear stopped being distant and became personal. I started noticing things that hadn't bothered me before. The way my reflection sometimes seemed slower than my movements. The faint scratches appearing on my bedroom mirror every morning like claw marks etched by invisible hands. The soft whispering sounds that lingered just at the edge of hearing whenever midnight approached. I stopped sleeping with the lights off, convinced that darkness had become an enemy I couldn't escape. Yet, despite the fear, there was something else growing quietly beneath it. A strange longing, an attraction toward the unknown figure from my dreams, like gravity pulling me toward something dangerous but irresistible. One night, unable to resist the urge any longer, I placed the latest note under my pillow before falling asleep, hoping to force whatever unseen presence was behind this to reveal itself more clearly. And when sleep finally claimed me, the dream returned instantly, sharper than ever before, as if reality itself had been peeled back to reveal another world hidden beneath it. This time, the hallway wasn't empty. She stood closer now, close enough that I could see her eyes, deep, dark, and shimmering like storm clouds before lightning strikes. And when she smiled, it wasn't comforting. It was haunting, the kind of smile that promised secrets rather than safety. "You shouldn't have ignored me," she said, her voice smooth yet heavy with emotion that felt older than time itself. And before I could respond, she stepped closer, her presence sending chills racing across my skin, her gaze locking onto mine as if searching for something buried deep inside me. I tried to speak, but my throat tightened, refusing to obey. And in that suffocating silence, she reached out, her fingers brushing against my wrist, sending a sharp jolt through my body like electricity surging through exposed wires. "You wrote them," she whispered, her words echoing unnaturally through the endless corridor, and confusion flooded my mind because I had never written any of the notes, never even considered such madness. Yet something inside me stirred at her accusation, a flicker of memory too faint to grasp. When I woke again, the sun had barely risen, casting thin streaks of gold across my bedroom floor. But the feeling of her touch lingered, burning faintly against my wrist. And when I looked down, my breath caught in my throat because there, faint but undeniable, were words etched into my skin as if written by an invisible hand. "Come find me." Panic should have consumed me, but instead, curiosity returned stronger than ever, pushing fear into the background like distant thunder. I began searching through old belongings, boxes stored in dusty corners, journals I hadn't opened in years, convinced that somewhere in my past there had to be a connection to the mysterious girl haunting my dreams. And that was when I found it. A worn-out notebook buried beneath stacks of forgotten papers, its cover cracked and faded, its pages yellowed with age. My hands shook as I flipped it open, and the moment I saw the handwriting inside, my stomach dropped because it matched the notes perfectly. Every letter slanted the same way, every curve identical, as if written by the same hand. But the worst part wasn't the handwriting. It was the date written on the first page, a date from years ago that I couldn't remember living through clearly, a period of time that existed like a blurred photograph in my memory. As I turned the pages, fragments of dreams spilled out in ink, descriptions of hallways, shadows, mirrors, and a girl with eyes like storms. And with every line I read, the room around me seemed colder, quieter, as if reality itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to uncover something I wasn't ready to face. Then I reached the final page, where a single sentence was written in bold, trembling strokes. "If she finds you again, it means you never truly woke up." I closed the notebook abruptly, my heart racing, the sound of my own breathing filling the silence. And that was when I heard it. A soft knock echoing from somewhere inside the house. Slow and deliberate, each tap spaced perfectly apart, like a countdown ticking toward something inevitable. And even before I moved toward the door, I knew with terrifying certainty that whatever waited on the other side wasn't just part of a dream anymore. It was real. And somehow, impossibly, the notes from my dreams had crossed into my world. Bringing her with them, I stood frozen in the hallway, staring at the door as the knocking continued. Slow, patient, deliberate. Each sound echoing through the house like a heartbeat that didn't belong to me. And for a moment, I considered ignoring it, pretending I hadn't heard anything at all. But curiosity and fear twisted together inside me until they became impossible to separate, pushing my trembling hand toward the cold metal handle. The moment my fingers wrapped around it, a strange sensation crawled up my spine. The same electric chill I had felt in the dream when she touched my wrist. And without fully understanding why, I whispered under my breath, "Who's there?" But the only response was silence so heavy it felt alive. Taking a slow breath, I pulled the door open. There was no one standing outside, only the empty street stretching beneath the dim glow of a flickering streetlight. The night air thick and unusually cold, carrying with it the faint scent of rain even though the sky above remained cloudless and still. My eyes scanned the ground, half expecting to see footprints or some sign of movement. But instead, my attention locked onto something small resting directly in front of the doorway. Another folded piece of paper. My stomach tightened as I bent down to pick it up, knowing before even opening it that whatever was written inside would pull me deeper into a mystery I was already struggling to understand. When I unfolded it, my breath caught in my throat. "You opened the door this time," the note read, the handwriting identical to every other message I had found, but beneath the sentence was something new. A rough sketch of a place I had never seen before, yet somehow recognized, like a memory buried too deep to reach consciously. It looked like an abandoned building, tall and narrow, with broken windows and vines crawling along its walls like veins spreading across decaying skin. I stared at the drawing for several seconds before an uneasy realization began forming in my mind, because the more I studied it, the more details became familiar. The angle of the roof, the shape of the cracked doorway, the crooked metal gate leaning slightly to one side. And suddenly, without warning, an image flashed across my memory. A place from my childhood. Somewhere I hadn't visited in years but had never fully forgotten. The old house at the edge of town. The one everyone said was cursed. I stepped back into the house slowly, closing the door behind me as if afraid something unseen might slip inside if I left it open too long. And as I leaned against the wall, clutching the note tightly in my hand, the memory continued unfolding piece by piece. I remembered walking past that abandoned house as a kid, always feeling watched whenever I glanced at its dark windows, always hearing stories whispered among friends about strange lights appearing there at night, about shadows moving behind broken glass even when no one was inside. At the time, I had laughed those stories off, pretending bravery I didn't truly feel, but now those memories felt heavier, darker, as if they carried truths I had once ignored. The next few hours passed in restless silence, my thoughts circling endlessly around the same question. Why was that place appearing in my dreams and notes now, after all these years? Eventually, unable to resist the growing pull any longer, I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside, the night air brushing cold against my skin as I walked down the empty road toward the far edge of town. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if something invisible was urging me forward while another unseen force tried desperately to hold me back. The closer I got, the quieter the world seemed to become, until even the distant sounds of traffic faded into nothingness, leaving only the soft crunch of gravel beneath my shoes. When the abandoned house finally came into view, my heart began pounding violently against my ribs. It looked exactly like the sketch on the note. Worse, even. Its walls stained with years of decay. Its windows shattered into jagged emptiness that resembled hollow eyes staring endlessly into darkness. The metal gate at the entrance creaked softly as I pushed it open, the sound echoing far louder than it should have in the stillness of the night. For a brief moment, I hesitated, my instincts screaming for me to turn back, to leave this place and pretend none of it had ever happened. But then I remembered her face from the dream, those dark, storm-like eyes, and something inside me shifted from fear into determination. I stepped closer to the front door, each movement slow and deliberate, until I stood directly before it. The wood was old and cracked, its surface covered in faded scratches that looked disturbingly similar to the marks appearing on my bedroom mirror every morning. My hand hovered in the air, trembling slightly before I knocked once. The sound echoed through the empty structure, hollow and distant, and for several seconds, nothing happened at all. Then, just as I began to turn away, convinced I had made a mistake coming here, the door creaked open by itself. A wave of cold air rushed outward, carrying with it the faint scent of dust and something else. Something darker, heavier, almost metallic. And despite every warning screaming inside my mind, I stepped forward into the darkness beyond the doorway. Inside, the house felt unnaturally silent, as if sound itself had been swallowed by the shadows clinging to every corner. Moonlight slipped through broken windows, casting long, crooked shapes across the floor, and as my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I noticed something strange written across the far wall in thick, uneven strokes. I moved closer slowly, my breath catching as the words became clearer with each step. "You came back," the message read, the same handwriting as before, but larger this time, darker, more desperate. My pulse raced as I scanned the room, searching for any sign of movement, any hint that I wasn't alone, and that was when I heard it. The soft sound of footsteps behind me. I spun around instantly, my heart slamming painfully against my chest, and there she was. Standing at the edge of the staircase, partially hidden in shadow, exactly as she had appeared in my dreams. Her dark hair fell loosely over her shoulders, moving slightly as if touched by a breeze that didn't exist, and her eyes locked onto mine with an intensity so powerful it felt like gravity pulling me toward her. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The silence between us felt charged, heavy with emotions I couldn't fully understand. Fear, recognition, and something dangerously close to longing. "You finally came," she said softly, her voice echoing through the empty house like a whisper carried on wind, and hearing it in the real world sent chills racing across my skin. My mind screamed that this was impossible, that she couldn't exist outside my dreams. Yet there she stood, solid and real, her gaze filled with something deeper than simple mystery. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely louder than a whisper. She tilted her head slightly, studying me with an expression that mixed sadness with something darker, something more dangerous. "You still don't remember," she murmured, her voice trembling faintly, as if the answer hurt more than the question itself. Slowly, she stepped down from the staircase, each movement deliberate, graceful, until she stood only a few feet away from me. The closer she came, the colder the air seemed to grow, and yet despite the chill crawling across my skin, my body refused to move away. Instead, I felt drawn toward her, pulled by an invisible thread that tightened with every second. "You wrote the notes because you promised you wouldn't forget me," she whispered, her voice breaking slightly at the edges. And as her words settled into my mind, a sudden flash of memory struck me without warning. An image of this very house years ago, filled with laughter instead of silence, and her standing beside me, smiling in a way that felt heartbreakingly familiar. My breath hitched sharply as the memory faded, leaving behind only fragments of emotion too strong to ignore. "What promise?" I asked, my voice shaking despite my effort to remain steady. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached forward slowly, her hand hovering just inches from mine, her fingers trembling slightly as if touching me carried consequences neither of us could escape. "The promise you made the night everything ended," she said quietly, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears that reflected the pale moonlight filtering through broken glass. And before I could ask another question, her fingertips brushed lightly against my skin once again, sending that same electric shock racing through my body. Only this time, the sensation didn't fade. It stayed, burning deeper, unlocking fragments of memories I had buried long ago. Memories filled with love, fear, darkness, and a secret so dangerous that forgetting it had once felt like survival itself. The moment her fingertips touched mine, the world around me fractured like glass struck too hard, and the darkness inside the abandoned house twisted into flashes of memories that weren't dreams anymore, but pieces of a past I had buried so deeply that even time itself had failed to erase them. And suddenly I was no longer standing in the cold ruins, but inside the same house years earlier, when the walls were painted clean, when laughter echoed through every room, and when she stood beside me not as a stranger, but as someone whose presence once felt like home. I saw us younger, standing near the staircase, whispering secrets only we understood, exchanging folded notes written in the same slanted handwriting that now haunted my reality, and the truth began unraveling slowly yet painfully. I had written those notes, not recently but long ago, during nights filled with fear and desperate hope. Nights when we believed dreams were the only safe place to hide what the waking world refused to accept. Her voice broke through the storm of memories, soft yet trembling with emotion that felt too heavy to carry alone. "You promised me you would never forget," she whispered, her eyes locked onto mine with a mixture of sorrow and longing that made my chest ache. And as her words settled into my mind, another memory surfaced, sharper than the rest. The night everything ended. Rain had poured endlessly outside, lightning tearing the sky apart while we argued in this very house, voices raised not in anger but in desperation, because the truth we carried was too dangerous to remain hidden forever. I remembered her crying, her hands gripping mine tightly as she begged me to listen, to stay, to face what we had done instead of running from it. But fear had won that night, overpowering love, convincing me that forgetting would be easier than surviving the truth. I had written the notes then, dozens of them, sealing them inside this house as a twisted safety net, believing that if I ever forgot her, the dreams would bring me back, guiding me to remember what my heart refused to lose completely. The memory ended with a single horrifying image: flashing headlights cutting through the darkness, the deafening sound of metal colliding, and her voice screaming my name before everything went silent. My vision snapped back to the present with a violent jolt, my breath catching sharply as I stared at her standing before me once again. No longer just a memory, but something far more terrifying and beautiful at the same time. "You died," I whispered hoarsely, the realization settling into my chest like a heavy stone, because now I remembered everything: the accident, the guilt, the endless nights haunted by dreams that felt too real to ignore, and the decision I had made afterward to lock those memories away, convincing myself that forgetting was survival. Her expression softened slightly at my words, but sadness lingered in her eyes like shadows that refused to leave. "Not completely," she replied quietly, her voice trembling as if holding back emotions too powerful to release. "You kept me alive inside your dreams, inside your promises." The air around us grew colder, heavier, as if reality itself struggled to maintain balance between memory and existence. And I felt a strange pull deep inside my chest, the same invisible force that had guided me to this house in the first place. I stepped closer to her slowly, my movements cautious yet determined, unable to resist the overwhelming need to understand what this meant, what she truly was now: a ghost, a memory, or something far more dangerous. "Why now?" I asked, my voice breaking slightly despite my effort to remain calm. "Why bring me back here after all this time?" She hesitated before answering, her gaze drifting briefly toward the shattered windows where moonlight spilled across the floor like silver threads. "Because you were starting to forget again," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the silence. "And forgetting me means losing the part of you that loved without fear." Her words struck deeper than any physical pain ever could, forcing me to confront a truth I had avoided for years: that love, even when wrapped in darkness and tragedy, was still worth remembering. I reached out toward her carefully, my hand trembling slightly as I brushed against her fingers once more. And this time, instead of cold emptiness, I felt warmth. A faint but undeniable heat that spread slowly through my skin like a heartbeat returning after being silent too long. "Stay," I murmured quietly, the word escaping my lips before I could stop it, driven by emotions stronger than logic or reason. She smiled faintly at my plea, but the sadness in her eyes deepened rather than fading, as if she already knew something I didn't. "I can't," she whispered gently, her voice soft yet final, carrying the weight of inevitable loss. "I was never meant to stay, only to remind you." The moment her words settled into the air, the house around us began trembling violently, walls cracking and dust falling from the ceiling like rain, and panic surged through my chest as I realized that whatever connection allowed her to exist here was breaking apart. "No," I said sharply, stepping forward in desperation, but she shook her head slowly, her expression calm despite the chaos surrounding us. "You have to wake up," she murmured, her voice steady even as the world crumbled around us. "Not from sleep, but from forgetting." The ground beneath my feet fractured suddenly, forcing me backward as pieces of the floor collapsed into darkness below, and in the chaos of falling debris and twisting shadows, I saw her reaching toward me one last time, her eyes glowing faintly with something that looked like both sorrow and peace. "Remember me," she whispered softly, her voice echoing through the collapsing house like the final note of a fading melody. And just before everything disappeared into darkness, her figure dissolved into streaks of pale light that scattered into the air like fragments of a dream slipping away. I woke with a violent gasp, lying on my bedroom floor as morning sunlight streamed through the window, my chest rising and falling rapidly as I struggled to catch my breath. unsure for several seconds whether the events I had just experienced were dreams or reality. Slowly, I pushed myself upright, my hands shaking as my eyes scanned the room for any sign that the night had truly happened. And that was when I noticed it. A single folded piece of paper resting quietly on my desk, exactly where the first note had appeared days ago. My pulse quickened as I approached it cautiously, my fingers trembling as I unfolded the paper to reveal the final message written in the same haunting handwriting I now recognized as my own. You remembered? And now I can rest. A heavy silence settled around me as I stared at the words, emotions twisting inside my chest in ways I couldn't fully explain. Grief, relief, and a strange sense of peace that felt unfamiliar yet comforting at the same time. Days passed after that morning, and no new notes appeared, no strange dreams returned, and the scratches on my mirror faded slowly until nothing remained except smooth glass reflecting a face that finally understood its past. Yet sometimes, late at night, when the world grows quiet and shadows stretch across the walls, I still feel the faint warmth of her touch lingering against my wrist, reminding me that love doesn't disappear when memories fade. It hides, waiting patiently to be remembered again. And if this story kept you hooked till the very end, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because the next dream might not just be a dream, it might be waiting to find you too.